Tonight is question and answer. This is my favorite meditation talk because I feel very confident in talking about anything for 5 minutes. After that, I start repeating myself and it becomes a disaster. But when you ask your question, you can submit it in the comments section on social. You can raise your hand by pressing the button at home on Zoom. You can raise your hand by raising your hand if you're here in the dojo. And your question, I always used to fantasize that, and I still do, that I was going to ask my seafood the question, the perfect question. And he was going to hear it, and he was just going to stand there and stare at me and say, "That's a great question. That's the best question that I've ever heard. You're so deep. You're such a great student." That probably won't happen. But if it's all coming from your ego, that's just another opportunity to practice recognizing that and letting it go. Your question can be about anything that is something deep about our practice, not just the mechanics of a front kick, something about meditation or something related to anything that we should get out of meditation. And make sure that your question is concise and that you're speaking loudly enough for us to hear. If you're at home, make sure that you unmute yourself when you ask your question. So, questions? Yes, ma'am.
I've got two, but I'll do the first one.
Please.
So how do you maintain your practice when you have an injury that keeps you from doing more strenuous, I guess, practice? And this is, I guess, more martial arts than meditation.
It could be about meditation too, yeah. How do you continue your practice when you're injured? And I could widen this to be, how do you continue your practice when something is in your way? So it's like, my schedule, or I'm trying to meditate and it's really loud at home, or whatever it is. And there are general philosophies here, but I'll talk about meditation and physical practice with an injury. So it's going to come down to, on some level, as you've heard me say a lot recently, lowered expectations. If you expect to be able to physically practice the same way as you did without an injury, with an injury, you will be very disappointed with yourself. If you expect to be able to meditate and have it feel the same physically, that might not happen. Depends on what your injury is. I'm going to suggest that if you're good at meditating and you're able to bring your awareness and your consciousness within completely and quickly, that the pain that you're feeling will disappear, if not completely, enough that you can meditate and it's not going to bother you. That's very unlikely to happen in your physical martial arts practice, because when you're moving around, something is going to happen that will draw your attention there and cause you to feel like, oh, I can't do anything. I'll tell you now, the last couple of months, I've had a string of not terrible injuries, but enough that it really brings my attention to it. And that's a nice way of putting it. I had first one knee, then the other knee. I busted my knees doing the same sweep on the same person 2 different times, 2 different sides. And then my shoulder from doing too much, I think, repetitive strengthening. And it's like one thing after the next. And that's how it, everything comes in groups of 3s. And when it rains, it pours. And it's been like what seems like an eternity since I've been able to practice the way that I'm used to practicing well, practicing hard. And so I got to just get used to it. And there will be times where for your physical practice, if your injury is so bad, you need to not practice. Those are few and far between. Usually what it is adapting. So my arms hurt. I don't throw this side with punches. I just keep it here and pretend. What if I was in a self-defense situation and I had to not use this arm? So I only throw this hand and I throw my legs, right? And it can be the same thing with meditation. Maybe you're used to meditating sitting in Seiza, but your knee hurts, so you can't do that anymore. You need to sit cross-legged, or you need to sit in a chair. So make the adjustments, and it is a very powerful, empowering way to look at injuries or anything that is trying to stop you in your practice, physical and internal, to look at them as an opportunity. Because I promise you that this thing, though it might not stop you, will be, something like it will keep coming up. And if you recognize that this is just an opportunity for me to flow, this is an opportunity for me to practice in a different way, then instead of your injury stopping you or hindering you, it will strengthen you in that way, right? And this is distinct from, my arms hurt, so I'm just going to throw it harder, because then it's going to become a permanent injury. My back hurts, but I'm just going to keep sitting the way that I always sit, even though it hurts my back like crazy. Make an adjustment. And if you can find the opportunity in an injury, or you can find the opportunity in any challenge that you're experiencing, then you'll notice that your practice becomes stronger, or you become stronger because of it. You get a more full experience. And this should definitely show up in other areas of life too. Where can you find the opportunity in whatever challenge you are having? Other question, sir?
People, how to balance, find the balance between martial arts and other sports I play. It's like sometimes it's maybe some habits from martial arts will make my other sports I play worse. And sometimes some bad habits from other sports will, my martial arts.
Mm-hmm.
So it's how to balance.
You play tennis, right? So his question, for those of you who didn't hear, is how do I balance between martial arts and the other things that I'm doing? Again, this is kind of a physical question. I could take it out into more of just a general balance question, and I might do that. But I played tennis before I practiced this style of martial arts. And when I showed up, I was really good at sidestepping already. I wasn't good at much else. Okay at like rotating the hips. And there are certainly lots of things that we do here that you should not do in tennis, and vice versa, right? I don't think you've gotten a chance to work with a stick a lot or use a weapon, but you'll probably have some good dexterity from playing tennis when you get to use a weapon in martial arts, and vice versa. You want to be able to use the principles, but you can't hold the weapon exactly the same way as you do a tennis racket. You can't move your body. This other hand can be out here when you're swinging a tennis racket, but if somebody's punching you, you got to keep your hand up. So the balance, I don't think is necessarily that of, I need to only, don't think of it like, I want to be good at both, so I have to do both the exact same amount of time or put the exact same amount of energy into both. That might be true, but I think it's more useful to see how these things complement each other and really maximize that, and then recognize the difference, and don't minimize your recognition of the differences. Recognize the differences, but don't get stuck on focusing on that. If you are able to, martial arts is not an anomaly, but it is a rarer physical activity and mental activity in the way that it really, especially the way that we practice, it casts a really wide net in the way that you move your body and the way that you're engaging your mind. So martial arts should make you better at lots of things, but you cannot go on the tennis courts and just do punches and kicks, because you will lose at tennis. Just like you can't come out here and wait for somebody to serve you a ball, because that's not going to work in martial arts, right? But recognize the similarities, focus on those, and you'll get much more out of your time doing both when you can draw those connections. It's similar to in our physical practice, if you're doing punches and kicks and you feel like how when you turn your body in a certain way that gives you power, when you draw the connections there in your mind, then that's going to help your body to move more correctly. The mental side of any physical activity at a very high level becomes very important. And there is so much research on this, but my Sifu always said that Michael Jordan doesn't love basketball. Tiger Woods doesn't love golf. Baryshnikov doesn't love ballet. They love the state of consciousness that they get into when they play. And it's the same thing with any high level tennis player or any athletic endeavor at the highest level. You get into a flow state, what we call mushin or something like it, right? And if you're doing this in sparring in our practice, you will experience this. It is a moving meditation. And if you are trying to win, and winning is what's on your mind, you're going to be less likely to win because this is in the way. Ego is in the way. You can't flow. To be at the very highest physical level, you have to let your mind not be in the way, let your ego not be in the way. So this creates an empty channel to just let it flow through you, let your muscle memory take over and respond lightning fast to whatever you see coming because you've trained your body to do this. So this, I would say, above anything else, is a really great way to feel the connection between the different things that you're doing that are physical if you're trying to get at a high level. I know that your question was more about like how do I avoid the negative consequences of doing these two things that have some opposing principles. And my answer for you tonight is basically don't spend all your time thinking about that. Spend more time recognizing the ways that they complement each other and try to maximize that as much as possible. Other question? We got any questions online? Go. Oh, Frida, hi. I can't see your hand. It blends into the color of your wall. Go ahead.
My question is, what is the difference between practicing martial arts and being a martial artist? So sometimes, you know, I'll talk to people and I'll say, I'll switch between, oh, I practice martial arts. And sometimes I'll say I'm a martial artist. But sometimes I feel strange about saying I'm a martial artist, but I feel more comfortable saying I practice martial arts. Is there really a difference?
Oh, yes. Absolutely. And I'm going to give you my definition of a martial artist, which I stole from my Sifu, and I don't know if he stole it from somebody else, but it's great and it's simple, and you're going to like this, Frida. And when I finish my answer, I hope that you will consider yourself a martial artist or do the things that you need to do to consider yourself a martial artist. And I really like this question, and it is important, I think, to draw a distinction. And I will tell you that in my opinion, there are many people practicing martial arts, many of whom might consider themselves a martial artist, who I do not consider a martial artist. And this is not because I dislike them. It's not because I think that what they're doing physically is wrong. Plenty of people who are practicing very similar techniques to us and practicing the same kinds of drills and doing all of that. But my definition is, if you are taking the lessons that you learn in class through your practice and applying them to everyday life on a regular basis, not just like I did it once, I'm a martial artist, but like on a regular basis, you're taking this stuff and doing it outside, you are a martial artist. And I do not mean you are defending yourself well physically. Sure, you should do that. Somebody attacks you, you should defend yourself. But I'll say this, and this is probably going to be in opposition to what many people who call themselves martial artists would say. I think it is less important to be able to physically defend yourself than it is to be able to apply the philosophy and the strategies that we learn in bettering ourselves physically and taking all that outside. That's less important in the definition of being a martial artist. And it's because we're drawing a distinction between being a fighter and being an artist, right? And a fighter doesn't really need to take the lessons outside. They just got to be able to fight. A martial artist has to be practicing in a way that they are transformed. The art is who we become and how we transform on a deep level, on a meaningful level. And so I could keep talking about this for a while, but I'm already done. That is the answer that I have for you, is if you are using what we learn in class outside, whether it be practicing being a partner rather than an opponent, whether it is you're taking the focus that you learn here and applying it to your job, or whatever it is, that means that you are a martial artist. If it only lives in the dojo, you're not a martial artist. If it is, I take it outside, but only because I'm defending myself or getting into fights, you're not a martial artist. It's got to be the mental and the physical happening here, but the lessons have to transcend your physical practice and happen outside in life. I got another one. Who's this? Amrita, go.
Sifu, I had a question about bullying. So sometimes I feel like when I kind of respond to bullying, I myself kind of like make the partner or opponents, not opponents, but partners, like a little bit offended. And so I end up putting myself, and they may be more powerful than me, so I end up putting myself in a bad position. So I don't know how to give a moderate response and not kind of like just say stop, because I realize that I have to say that stop, and I feel that is the right response, but sometimes that may not be appropriate.
So sorry, when you were saying bullying as part of your question?
Yeah.
And so you're talking about somebody is bullying you physically or mentally or in the dojo, or?
No, it is, I'm saying in many aspects of life, whether it is physical, mental, emotional, financial, whatever it is.
You're feeling bullied on some level, and then you're saying you have a hard time saying stop to that?
No. I don't have a hard time saying stop. I immediately
love saying stop.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I immediately just kind of protest that, because I know that is the right thing to do. But what happens is when I do that, I often end up in loggerheads with more people more powerful than me. So I don't know how to protect myself. Like, okay, I cannot let, like a response would be like, I have to probably let go and accept the bullying because I'm less powerful, but I don't want to do that.
All right, I get your question. I don't know if I have the best answer, but I've got an answer at least. And we're talking about bullying, or maybe somebody just being aggressive, or maybe somebody is kind of pushing on your boundaries in a way that is not acceptable, or you don't want to accept it. And what you do is to kind of stop it, but you end up kind of like this, like butting heads with somebody, and you end up in like a fight of force versus force against somebody who's more powerful than you, and you're going to win. It's the physical analogy is easy to see, but it's the same thing. You get into a shouting match with somebody who's better at shouting, or somebody who's in a more powerful position than you. What do you do with that? And as you point out in your question, you could just accept it, but there are issues with that, right? You don't just want to accept and then reinforce this thing that somebody else is doing. You don't just want to accept and let your boundaries dissolve. If you're talking about having a healthy boundary, it's important to have it. But what do you do? So I had a question that was related to this in class yesterday, and I'll maybe pick from that a little bit, but I'm going to use the analogy that you're used to from Tai Chi of push hands. Of your partner is pushing you, and that is almost a momentary like aggression coming at you. And this could be the same thing as somebody being aggressive physically, emotionally, yelling at you, whatever it is. And this energy coming at you, you can try to stop it. You can try to move out of the way, which is better than trying to stop it, because if you move out of the way, you're not in this, butting heads, power versus power situation. But the highest level is to play with it. And when I say this, a lot of times it sounds like manipulation, and that is the last thing that I'm saying that you should try to do. And in many cases, you won't even be able to manipulate this person even if you're trying to. What I'm saying is they're pushing, and instead of stopping it or just getting out of the way, you redirect it and you play with the energy. And in order to do this, you have to kind of be in the right mindset. You have to have a positive outlook on it, where you see it coming and you see the opportunity, like what I was talking about in the earlier class, right? When you see your partner pushing, you don't freeze up and think, oh no, I'm being pushed. You see it immediately as an opportunity to redirect, and maybe I push it back on my partner, maybe I pull them through, maybe I steer it wherever. So you got to start with the mindset where you're able to recognize the energy coming immediately, and you're able to merge with it and play with it. So push hands and a conversation should be the same thing. And the other person, this is at a high level, the other person might be coming in with lots of energy, and it's very overpowering unless you catch it and you're able to really merge with it. And on the other side of it, it might be a very subtle thing. It might be they're just being a subtle kind of jerk, or they are very, subtly being passive aggressive. And you got to be able to recognize that very, very small, subtle energy and be able to play with that. It's all coming back to sensitivity. And if you're rigid, if you're tense, if you are quick to anger and to butt heads, then there's no ability to play with the energy. All you're doing is fighting against it. If you are able to feel it and you're able to play with it and redirect it, like I was talking about last night when I answered the question, maybe you disarm them with a smile. However it is that you can kind of turn this into an experience where, and look, it should actually feel the same way for the other person. It should feel like you are both part of the same energy and you're both playing with it. And this is what push hands is like, and this is what practice on a high level is like. It's not you just destroying the other person and then walking away victorious. It's like you both actually leave feeling great about that interaction at the end. And that's not necessarily something that you can control, but it's something that you can invite into that space in that interaction. It's something that you can play with. It might take years, but eventually you'll get it. I got another one. Who's that? Zelda? Go, ma'am.
Yes. When I first signed up, Catherine mentioned that going at least twice a week to class would make a difference. And I was wondering how often and how long should we be meditating each week to see a difference, in your opinion?
This is not even my opinion, Zelda. This is fact. What I'm about to tell you right now is written in blood and stone everywhere around the world. This is absolutely a guarantee. You should be meditating every day. Now, do you need to meditate for an hour every day? Would be great. I would love that. If you're going from nothing, or I meditate once a week for 10 minutes, to I meditate every day for an hour, that's not going to last long. That'll last 15 minutes into your first meditation, and then you're like, no way. So start at a level that is sustainable for you. It's got to be sustainable physically for you. You can't just sit for the first time for such a long time that your body hurts and then you get overwhelmed by it and you give up and quit. If you need to start with 5 minutes a day, start with 5 minutes a day. Meditating twice a day is better than meditating once a day, but I'm practical. Start with 1 time a day. If you've got that, try to up that. I would say 10 minutes is a good bare minimum of time to be meditating. On a regular basis. After a couple of months, you want to get to 10 minutes. And then up that to 20 minutes. 20 minutes is a very good amount of time. There have been studies that have shown that 20 minutes daily meditation is where you're going to see kind of the most bang for your buck, as far as the way that it's going to impact your ability to stay calm and in the moment throughout your day, and the way that you're able to reprogram your mind to get the most out of it. And more is always better. Of course, you can say there's like a bell curve here, and there's a rate of diminishing returns, but it's not like you're meditating longer is going to be worse for you. It's just that it will start to level off a little bit the amount that you get out of a hour-long, 2-hour-long, 3-hour-long meditation will kind of taper. But every once in a while, do a very long meditation and get into that deeper state. We practice what we call a long meditation is only a half an hour, but you want to try to get to the point where you can meditate for an hour or more. And if you're doing that once a month at least, I would say that's really good. But this is further down the road. As you said, you just started. And I do not expect you to be meditating that long, but I do highly recommend a daily practice of meditation. And it's for a couple of reasons. I mean, the frequency is great. As I said, meditating more often than that, twice or thrice a day. Meditate, the more often you do it, the more you're able to get yourself into that state, the better off you're going to be. But if you look at the chunk of time that is a day, from the sunrise to the sunset, when you wake up to when you go to sleep, this is the most common chunk of time that we have a tendency to measure time by. And when we're looking at forming habits, if you are doing something daily, that's going to be the strongest way to form the habit and make it a ongoing, consistent practice. If you do it once a week, of course, that's better than nothing. But once a week starts to get real wishy-washy because you're like, okay, it's Saturday. It's the day that I normally meditate, but I'm so busy today. I can't do it. I'll try it tomorrow. All right, it didn't happen this week. For sure, it'll happen next week. All right, it didn't happen this month. For sure, it'll happen next month. It's so easy to slide down that slippery slope once you start. So just do it every day. By the time you go to bed, you should have meditated for whatever amount of time you can pull off that day. Start easy with 5 minutes. And you'll recognize that is more often than I say you really need to be practicing physically. But of course, if you're practicing your martial arts physically every day, that will be better. That does not mean that you need to come to class every day. You might not have the time or the, physical ability to do that, but practice something somehow. Practice, 5 minutes of sidestepping or pivoting or something. But get into the habits, and there are lots of different ways to create a daily meditation practice. And I'm not going to get into all of them right now because that's a whole meditation talk by itself. But basically, if you are getting into bed and you have not meditated yet, get out of bed and do it. And on a simple level, that's it. That's how you're going to make a daily practice, and that's how you're going to get the most out of your practice. So I'm sure we've got more questions, but we don't have time for them. Is it a very fast one? What is it?
What is the purpose of being annoyed? Like, why is that?
You think that's a fast question? What's the purpose of being annoyed? Let me tell you, you're tempting fate right now by asking me this right when I said we were about to meditate, Meryl. The purpose of being annoyed, this is my quick answer, is the same purpose as pain. It's the same purpose as anger, is to draw your attention to something. And then what you do with it is up to you. If what you do with getting annoyed is continuing to be annoyed, you're missing the point. If what you do with anger is to continue being angry, you're missing the point, right? It's to draw your attention to something to then do something about it. And sometimes what there is to do about it is to let it go and practice letting go. So when you sit for your meditation right now, You might get annoyed by something. There might be that persistent thought that keeps coming back. Okay, what there is to practice today is to let it go. You might be annoyed by the way that your body feels or feeling, some kind of pain, and your mind is going to keep going back to that. What it's drawing your attention to is maybe learn how to sit in a better way that's not as painful, but ultimately in this moment, what you're being drawn to is to let that go. Sit comfortably. I'm going to leave these on right now. Go ahead and leave on the very top light for me too, ma'am. I'm going to leave on Zoom as well. Not that one. Turn this one off. Leave the top light on, girl. That's the one. All right. And I know that's a little bit bright for you guys in here, but you'll deal. So sit very comfortably with your spine straight, eyes upturned. Pull, close eyes. Make sure your shoulders are rolled back and relaxed. Chin is parallel to the ground. Relax and watch the breath. Let go of all thoughts, worries, and cares. Be here now. Também. César. All right. Right. Kaisa. Great night. See you tomorrow.